to our first Market and Economic Outlook series of 2021. And we hope everyone had a good holiday season and a happy new year to everyone. And we titled this presentation A Year of Transition. In many ways, we think 2021 will be a year of transition. And really wanted to talk through what's going on in the markets today, what's happening in the economy. We've had an eventful week this week in Washington, of course. And what we wanted to do today is take a quick look back at 2020 and what was going on, what actually happened in the markets over the course of the year, which is really an extraordinary year, and then spend some time looking forward. What will the new year bring, and some of the key themes that we're seeing developing today. So first, a quick review of 2020. We've gone through this in many ways, but the year was unprecedented in so many different ways. The equity market, however, in the U.S. and broadly across the world, rose sharply in the fourth quarter. And that's all to do with this hope that the vaccines that are being delivered today in the U.S. and around the world will be effective and allow us to get back to some semblance of normalcy. Underneath that, some of the things that are really driving markets higher right now are value stocks, small companies, and non-U.S. markets. They're recovering very strongly because they benefit more from a global economic recovery. This is a theme we've talked about throughout 2020. But even with the strong rebound in these economically sensitive sectors in the fourth quarter, U.S. equity markets as a whole, when you look back at the entire year, were dominated by large companies, technology companies, and communication stocks that really, in fact, benefited from the situation and the environment that the pandemic led to. And when we look back, it's really kind of surprising, but despite a global pandemic, a very contested US election, a very deep and severe economic recession, US stock markets reached all-time highs in 2020, really ending the year in December at a very high level, and rewarding those investors and clients of ours who stuck with the strategy through the good times and the bad. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about what that looked like. So the scale of the economic shock that occurred as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic was unprecedented, as we said. But so was the speed at which the equity markets recovered. So what we have on the right-hand side is a picture, really, of how the market returns evolved over the year. And I'll highlight a few of these. So there's a lot of asset classes represented here. U.S. large companies represented by the light blue, U.S. small companies represented by the orange, non-U.S. developed, that's Europe and Japan, represented by the gray, emerging markets represented by the yellow, fixed income, which is the dark blue here, right in the middle, a pretty steady and calming asset class throughout, which is a nice ballast in client portfolios. And then global real estate, which is the green, which clearly is among most affected by what we're seeing with the pandemic and the impact, because even today, a new year, we still have COVID-19 case counts rising and effectively continued shutdowns, or at least limitations on activity, particularly in the restaurant, travel, and other leisure areas. So with that said, the Federal Reserve is going to keep policy rates low, even though markets are rising. Policy rates will remain low because the economic recovery is still developing. And this will occur even if inflation begins to rise, which is beginning to become a headline topic. The incoming Biden-Harris administration, which is really the theme of the last quarter of 2020 and an important factor in our 2021 outlook, in our view, is expected to prioritize the pandemic relief, getting more stimulus bills through Congress and infrastructure spending bill through Congress. And that's going to be the priorities, at least initially. And a quick final comment on 2020 is that the balanced approach that Wescott applies within the portfolios provided very attractive absolute returns in 2020, despite all that volatility, and in fact delivered it with less ups and downs than the global equity market did. So with that, and really unbelievable, unprecedented year, where do we go in 2021? And we talked about these key themes, but it's really been from this idea of a pandemic trade, which was dominated by a flight to quality and driven by uncertainty, to a reopening trade based on vaccine hopes and return to normal. So what are we seeing? We're seeing first some clarity on what the US political environment is looking like. As we just mentioned, the incoming Biden-Harris administration is focused on supporting the economy, getting everyone back to work, maybe some infrastructure spending to stimulate the economy. But it's our view that they're unlikely to focus on changing tax policy dramatically anytime this year. That may be something done in the years to come, but right now that's not the priority. As a result, what we're seeing is the equity markets that been led by the technology sector, which has really been benefiting from the current environment, is potentially beginning to change and broadening out, which is really important as the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines allows the rest of the economy to reopen. And while we see that happening, and the economic recovery in the US was rapid. If you look at GDP, for example, it's back up pretty strongly in the fourth quarter. It was very uneven. And as this pandemic trade does give way to a reopening trade, we think cyclical sectors, international markets, value stocks, which have really been left behind, are expected to continue to recover. And we're really seeing the start of that at the end of last year, and we expect that to be a basis for our outlook going forward. So with that, a real quick update. Again, we really thank you for your continued trust in Wescott, your confidence in us. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me or your advisor if you have any questions. And again, we wish everyone a very happy and healthy 2021.